Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, guten morgen, bonjour, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Ken at 10. How are you today? Hope you're doing well. It's Wednesday, 25th of August, and it's kind of overcast here. The good news is there's no shortage of sun cream, courtesy of the Met Office getting it wrong again. Absolutely terrible. My colleague Jack was just saying, they got it wrong again, and quite right. It's frustrating though, isn't it? What's happening with this summer? I hope we get some sunshine before the winter comes, but it's looking increasingly unlikely. But there we are. So how are you today? I hope you're well. If you're joining us for the first time, then thanks very much for coming. This is Ken at 10. We are James Alexander Estate Agents. We're based in Norbury, Southwest 16, Southwest London. We're a Zone 3 commuter area, and we sell, let, and manage properties in Southwest London and talk about them, really. So how are you doing today? Hope you like my yacht. Sort of sitting in this mega yacht here, courtesy of a green screen. Why? I don't know. Just fancied it, really. Haven't got a mega yacht. Wouldn't mind one, though. If I win the lotto, maybe. By the way, Below Decks, that's one worth watching. Reality show that I do find quite amusing. Look it up on Prime, if you've got it. Right, let's talk about the market. What's going on? There's an article in Sky News for Financial Times and the Times. I think it was written by Captain Obvious. It says UK house sales plunged in July. I mean, obviously all sales were brought forward because of the June deadline, and naturally that's meant that there's been a lack of sales in July and of course, if you think about it, if you brought forward all those decisions prior to June this year, then as many people as possible that perhaps would have moved in the second half of this year have brought that decision forward, and they've made that decision already. So it's natural that there won't be so many sales in July. What it's basically saying is that the initial shock has driven people to do nothing. But of course, cheap money will make the difference, because that's the thing that's really driving the market right now. Money is so cheap. Fixed rates by the way, it's not financial advice, fixed rates are under 2%, 1 point something, even less than that in some cases. Absolutely extraordinary. Money is cheap if the banks will lend you money. And that's the irony. We've got a kind of a tale of two halves here, because we find quite often we've got tenants that are paying far more than the equivalent mortgage payment on a flat to buy. But A, they don't have the deposit, and B, their salary wouldn't suggest that they could afford what they're already paying regularly. And it seems very unfair to me that these people actually live frugally, they can afford to pay their rent and could just as easily afford to pay a mortgage. But, computer says no. Very frustrating. And coming on to the next article, that ties in quite nicely with what the Express are saying, and that is rental demand is expected to rise in cities. And of course, this is partly due to the release of the lockdown. And the average rent in the UK, have a guess, what do you think? £1,029 a month. It's a lot of money, isn't it, for young people to find? This is up 6.6% from the same point last year and 2.2% from the previous month. And that's the home let rental index. Rent in London has risen to a high average of £1,645, while the southwest of England has seen the biggest rises at 12.9%. Obviously, this is good news if you're a landlord and you're looking at your investment longer term. And they're expecting demand to grow steadily for the rest of the year as the lockdown eases. Hopefully, who knows? Cars more environmentally friendly than homes. There's an article in the BBC. Homes pump out more carbon emissions than cars, research shows. And that's before the electric revolution with cars, of course. But England's 25 million homes emit 58.5 tons of carbon each year due to gas central heating and poor insulation. In contrast, its 27 million petrol and diesel cars emit 56 million tons. It's quite close, isn't it? It's likely to change rapidly as we go over to electric cars, as we've spoken about before. But they're talking about carbon neutrality for social housing. But that's going to cost more, and the money's got to come from somewhere. And that will result in either a lack of house building or a shortage of money. But one way or another, that's something that's going to come home to roost for sure. And I think, people, they talk about air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps, which appear to be the future of heating. This is where an air source heat pump, for instance, recovers what heat it can from the environment and then converts that into heating for a house via hot water pipes. And the ground source heat pumps are where they dig down deep enough where it's warm and then have an array of pipes which actually sort of snake around underneath your garden or outside space. And then that heat creates a temperature of, rather than 0 degrees, bring it up to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 degrees, which considerably reduces the amount of heat you have to add to heat your homes. So I do think heat pumps are coming, air source and ground source, but the problem at the moment is cost. there's still something like 3 or 4 times the cost of gas central heating. And whilst that remains to be the case, without some substantial grants, most of us are not going to be able to afford to make that change. But it is interesting, and in the future, it'll be interesting to see what other technologies come along. You know, they're talking about adding different things into gas to try and make that work in a more friendly way, hydrogen particularly. Be interesting to see what happens there. Apart from that, busy day today, lots of valuations. One, an opinion on converting a house into flats. And, you know, it's much more expensive than it used to be. What we're finding is that when you do the sums, quite often, if you're taking a house and turning it into 2 flats in our area, the end doesn't justify the means. In other words, the cost of conversion per unit, which can run anywhere between 80 and 100,000, if you add that on to the initial value of the house, you're better off leaving it as a house, refurbishing it and selling it on. And quite often that refurb shouldn't be substantial, because you can end up, as we've spoken about many times, being that white elephant, being that house that, you know, is just £250,000, big refurb on it, but actually nobody spends that extra £250,000 on a house in that road. So be careful not to be a busy fool. Make sure you keep your property in the lane for the road if you're doing an investment refurb, because quite often we find people are aiming all of their money into their property refurbs and not realizing that it doesn't necessarily return what you put in. Be very careful of what you're doing. Get advice prior to doing the work. We're always available. We talk all the time to people that are thinking of making improvements and wondering whether there is a substantial value add. The most substantial value add you can make in our experience locally is actually the obvious. It's gas central heating. And that will add on around 10,000 to the value of a house locally in our area. And it will cost in the order of between 3,000 and 6,000, depending on how much pipe work there is to do. And, you know, so that's a substantial benefit. But realistically, most of us already have that. And then it's a question of, you know, what do you add on by extending the space into the garden? What can you do that makes yours different from others in the area? And would you then end up at a price point which is so out of the ordinary for the road that people won't actually pay it? So don't become a white elephant. Do talk to agents before you do it. Talk to us. You know, we're here for that. We love talking property, as you know. Well, that's it for Ken at 10 today. Hope you have a fantastic day. Here in Norbury, it's looking overcast again. No need for sun cream, he said, frustrated. Hopefully the sun will return soon. Have a fantastic day. Look after your family and friends. See you same time, same place tomorrow. Ciao.